When two people read the same book, they can go through very different experiences. Some people are moved by a book to the extent that they return to it every once in a while. Some people can only remember the trail of scents, but they cannot recall the crease of a cloth and the solidity of some objects, or the arcing of some brows. Well, Vladimir Nabokov, the writer of the eternal masterpiece Lolita, wrote an essay entitled Good Readers and Good Writers, where he outlined what it meant to be both. I want to frame Nabokov's argument by portraying it against the common sense view of art and the popular cult of realism. For art to be realistic, there must be a reality upon which you and I agree. Obviously, there is no such reality. When I say that a work of literature is not realistic, what I mean is that if the characters were transplanted into the world in which I live, they would not behave this way. But do they have to behave as if they exist in my world? We should always remember that the work of art is invariably the creation of a new world, so that the first thing we should do is to study that new world as closely as possible, approaching it as something brand new, having no obvious connection with the worlds we already know. There are some people who read novels because they want to be educated about matters of society, or worse, about matters of history. The problem with that, of course, is that the artist is not a historian. You do well to read a historian for history and the artist for art. And the truth is that great novels are great fairy tales. Nabokov distinguishes between the minor author and the real author. The minor author simply takes a reality for granted and ornaments it according to some traditional patterns of fiction. But the real writer has to invent his own reality. Take the characters out of the reality of that author, and the characters simply stop making sense. But the real writer, the fellow who sends planets spinning and models a man asleep and eagerly tampers with the sleeper's rib, and that kind of author has no given values at his disposal. He must create them himself. Now to the matter of the reader. When Nabokov was a teacher, he apparently made a list of qualities that could make a good reader and asked his students to choose between these qualities. And the qualities are: 1. The reader should belong to a book club. Number 2. The reader should concentrate on the socio-economic angle. Number 3. The reader should have seen the book in a movie. Number 4. The reader should identify himself or herself with the hero or heroine in the novel. Number 5. The reader should be a budding author. Number 6. The reader must own a dictionary. Number 7. The reader must have an imagination. Number 8. The reader should have some artistic sense. Number 9. The reader should prefer a story with some dialogue and action to a story with none. Number 10. The reader must have memory. You can pause the video and choose your top 4. Apparently, Nabokov's students leaned heavily towards emotional identification, action, and the socio-economic angle. Of course, as you have guessed, the good reader is one who has imagination, memory, a dictionary, and some artistic sense. Let's break down what Nabokov means when he says a reader with imagination. He distinguishes between two types of imagination, the lowly kind of imagination and the elevated kind. The lowly kind of imagination is when the reader can only feel the book intensely when he can relate to something or the other that is happening in the novel. Or else, the novel describes a landscape that makes the reader nostalgic of his own past. Or else, and this is the worst kind, the reader, identifies himself or herself with the character in the book. So what is the authentic kind of instrument, the authentic imagination that the reader should use? This is the impersonal kind of imagination. This is the ability to pay attention to something which means absolutely nothing to you. We should always remember that we are guests in the author's world, and to say we like the way he arranges his furniture because we relate to it is tantamount to saying that if we simply closed our eyes and evoked the way we arrange our own furniture, we could have the same delight as he is giving us through the book. And this is an insult to the author. We must see things and hear things. We must visualize the rooms, the clothes, the manners of an author's people, and the color of Fanny Price's eyes in Mansfield Park, and the furnishings of a cold little room are important. This means that the reader must possess both the scientific and the artistic quality. Like an intensely artistic being, he must be able to cry at the book. He must be able to feel ecstasy at the book. But, like a scientific being, he must be able to maintain a certain distance, to watch objectively the writer's world for what it is, rather than for its closeness to the world in which the reader lives. Now we must understand that a poor reader can make the great writer mediocre. If you read a novel not to be enchanted, but to simply be entertained or informed, you have started from the wrong place. Of course, a good writer can combine the qualities of a storyteller, of the magician, of the enchanter, and even of the teacher. But only if we go to him for enchantment can we get the most out of literature. And Nabokov calls this reading not by your heart, not even by your mind, but by your spine.